Hello and welcome to this latest video. This is a build-off challenge between Wastelands Raceway and Gaslands Nor Cal. The challenge is to take a classic Hot Wheels Big Air Bel-Air and modify it in the theme of St. Valentine's Day. So let's see what I've managed to do, and then we'll compare it with what Gaslands Nor Cal have managed to do. Don't go away. Here's the car in its original naked form. So first things to do is prepare it ready for customization, and I'll use my my very special technique. There you go. Get it ready and boom, easy. Basically what I've done is drilled the car, broken it up and undercoated it with a brown spray paint. Nice and easy, primed up, ready to go. First stage is I'm going to use a sponge and some skeleton bone from Army Painter in their war paints range, and I'm just going to sponge the pale colour here onto the vehicle. It gives a nice kind of gritty rough texture. It's quicker than painting and you don't need to worry about brush marks. You get the idea. Let's just zip through this nice and quick so you don't have to get bored. There you go, done. Ready for putting some colour on later on. So let's move on to the next stages. So I'm just going to clip the light bars off of the frame because let's face it, a bunch of light bars wouldn't last 5 minutes in the Wastelands, would they? Besides, they're just going to get in the way for what I've got planned. So let's just get rid of them. So that's done. I don't need the interior that came out of the car, so stick that in the bits box. Right, let's get the metallic bits on the frame painted in. Just gonna quickly paint them in now while the car's in pieces. So there you go, that's done. Well, I say it's done, but me being me, I can't stop just titting around with it a little bit more, maybe just a little bit more. But once this is done, I will be moving on to the main colour of the car, which will be this colour, Warp Lock Purple, which, although it says purple, is actually quite a pink colour, a hot pink, and I'll be using the same stippling method again, which you've already seen, so I won't make you watch all of it. I'll just zip through nice and quick. There you have it, the car is pink. But it's a little bit patchy because the stippling technique I've used, the sponging technique, but patchy is good for the Wasteland. Patchy looks rough and worn out, and rough and worn out is what I like. I'm just going to quickly metal up the bits on the base now with, I think it was Army Painter gunmetal paint I'm using, just to get a bit of metallic sheen on the bits and pieces on the bottom of the car. That's done. Let's move on to the next bit. And that next bit is sponging over a bit lighter this time with a lighter tone of pink, just to pick out the highlights and give a little bit more definition to the car itself. And that's done. It might not show on the camera, but it's made a bit of a difference. I like it and I'm happy. So moving on now, when you think about armouring this beauty up, what I'm going to use is some of this stuff, packaging tape. I'm going to cut it to size and stick a piece on the roll cage in the back window of the car to protect the drivers from any fire coming in from behind. I'll just stick it to the frame. Theoretically I'll stick it to the frame, but as you'll see, I'm quite good at sticking things to my fingers. I'll get there eventually, but yeah, once this is painted up, this will look quite nice, interesting texture. I've used it before and I quite like the way that it looks. Not only that, it's absolutely free. You don't have to pay for it, which also works very well for me. But there you go. It's in place in the back, and when it's painted, that's going to look pretty groovy, or at least I hope it will. I'm going to try and do something interesting here with the driver's window. I've got some old pieces of plastic rod, and I'm just going to cut a few lengths and stick them in the windows as bars. Just rough and ready kind of protection. Should look okay, especially once painted up and rusted, etc. Makes a difference, makes a change from the bog standard grille that we all use, which looks fine, it looks great and I use it a lot, but sometimes I like to mix it up a bit. So let's see how this turns out. So, progress thus far. Let's start with the main body of the car. I've added a few bits off camera. So to start with, I've used more of that plastic rod and I've stuck myself 3 lengths of it across the front of the windscreen. The idea is there'll be sort of reinforcements and support for the armour that's going to go in later on. I've also added to the side window, the passenger side window. This is the passenger side because I'm in the UK. I've added the passenger side window a piece of this, which is my favourite tried and trusted aluminium foil out the top of a peanut jar. This one, stuck it in place, cut a slot in it. That looks, I think, like some battered metal. And there you go. You've got the rods that I stuck in the other side. I put 2 in, and that hopefully should be enough to just look like reinforcement protection armour for the drivers. The glue's a bit wet at the moment, wait for it to dry. Here we have the roll cage with the shock absorbers and stuff painted in silver, and that piece of packing tape in the back, which is now stuck nice and solid. That will look okay once it's painted up, I think. And here we've got the base with just the bits and pieces of metal, metallic stuff painted in, which once the car's finished, hopefully will just give it a slightly more finished look. But there you go. That's the progress thus far. Let's move on. Here we go, a bit more progress now. I have painted up the armoured bits with metallic to make them look metallic. I've touched in the trim on the side. I've stuck a 3D printed harpoon on the roof, which needs a little bit more work. I've got an idea for that. And what I've also done is put some textured paint into the wheel arches, just to make it look a bit dirty. Still a bit wet at the moment, I have to wait for that to dry. I've also used some of the textured paint around sort of the joins where the armour meets the body, and on some of the high points, just to show a bit of rust, grime, texture, make the thing look a bit bashed up. And I've used Green Stuff World rust textures for that. They do it in 3 colours. It's a nice paint, it gives a nice rusty, grimy texture. Really good. I will be coming back a bit later to add some more grime to the car, and also to add a bit of punch, a bit of zing to the rusting, but more on that later. I'm also planning to put some big old chunky wheels on this thing, because let's face it, who doesn't like big old chunky wheels? I think for this casting they will work, because it's quite a robust looking car as well. So yeah, looking forward to getting them on there. And by the magic of YouTube, here they are. They're on there. We'll have a closer look at those in a bit. Right, what I've done here is I've now slapped a brown wash, a diluted brown wash, over the whole thing. And while that's drying, I'm just gonna paint in the heart that I've stuck on the front of the harpoon here. I've made that out of cereal packet cardboard, just cut it out and stuck it in there, just to give it a bit more of a Valentine's theme. Rusting and weathering next. So just going to enhance the gritty, dirty feel that I've already got there. I'm going to be using one of my favourite paints, actually. It's Dry Rust from Dry Rust from Army Painter, which is a very matte orange, and I'm also going to be using an old makeup brush. Very simple technique. I'm just going to be stippling, lightly stippling the Dry Rust paint into the areas that I want a bit more sort of bright rustiness going in there. Just stippling it in with the ends of the bristles. Kind of like dry brushing, but not really. So I'll be doing this in the areas, or a bit too much on there. Just take it a bit away, and you can see that it's quite a nice effect. It works quite well, and it's nicely random. Remember, less is more. You can always go back in and add more in a bit, which you'll see me do soon. You can also use the sponge for the rust paint stippling technique. Both techniques are good, both work, both have pros and cons, but this gives quite a nice sort of random flaky paint kind of feel to it. So yeah, you can see it's going on quite nicely. I do like the effect of this paint, I really do like it. You can do as much or as little of this as you like, but you do have to decide at some point when enough is enough. And I'm always bad at making that decision, always doing that little bit more and a little bit more, but I think now enough is enough. That looks alright, doesn't it? Yeah, I'm happy with the way that's turned out. I also like to use this dry rust paint very, very diluted and wash it over some of the areas that I want to look a bit corroded. When it dries perfectly matte, so it gives a nice old dusty, cruddy, rusty look. So I'm just going to wash it into some of the areas that I want a little bit more corrosion and rubbiness to be. So that would be in sort of the crevices, in some of the recesses, anywhere really that you think is going to suffer the effects of corrosion. For this effect you want the paint really, really, really diluted, 1 part 10, maybe even 1 part 20 paint to water. You're really just making a thin wash with it, and when it dries it just leaves a sort of a patina on the metal. It makes it look old and grubby. Works for me. Make sure not to forget the wheels, because the wheels are going to be exposed to weathering and the effects of corrosion. So what I'm doing now is my usual thing of I can never leave it alone. I'm always having a little bit of extra play because I really enjoy the weathering process. So bear with me while I just mess around with it just a little bit longer. So let's move on now then to dusting this thing up, putting a bit of weathering on there. I'll be using my old favourite Desert Yellow from Army Painter and my trusty old cheap makeup brush, and what I'm doing here is essentially dry brushing. I'm using very, very little paint on the bristles. I'm getting the paint on the brush in, then drying it off, so essentially you've got pretty much just bare pigment that I'm now stippling on, and the idea is that it gives a sort of very dusty, grainy look, and I'm hoping that I can stick to the less is more technique, to just get a light dusting rather than totally smother this thing. Now using the same colour paint as your dry brush dusty colour paint, very, very diluted, just wash it into the cleats on the tyres. What it'll do, it will settle into the treads, the tread pattern, and look like the dust has settled into the tyre cleats. And when it's dried off, it should look dusty. So a quick guided tour of the final project. I've used the packing tape in the front window there, and also I've used some cereal box card to make just some metal chunks to go in the windscreen. Similar, I've used the same tape in the back there. I used the aluminium foil in the passenger window. I've also used a cereal box card to make the heart-shaped shield on the front of the harpoon, which I've painted metallic and rusted it up a bit for the Valentine theme. So there you have it, a Big Air Bel-Air that I'm going to call the Heartbreaker. Now had I had a bit more time I would have probably painted a broken heart on the bonnet and maybe the name down the side, but in typical Kinky Weasel fashion, didn't leave myself enough time, haven't really had time to do that, so this model will have to stand or fall by what I've managed to achieve so far. But do you know what? I'm fairly happy with it. I think it's alright now. Now, the money shots. Don't go away. So let's have a quick look at what Gaslands Nor Cal have produced. This vehicle is heartburn, and look, you can see the flames coming out of a flamethrower on the roof there. Interestingly, we both went for pink. I suppose that's fairly predictable Valentine's Day. We also both added really chunky wheels. I think this casting really works nicely with chunky wheels. Yeah, much to my shame, this one does have extra decoration on the sides, so that's a point against me, I think. And look at these massive, great big exhausts coming out of the bonnet, or the hood if you're in America. Massive things. They look really good. Yeah, I think this is a nice treatment of the casting and of the theme. So get on over to Gaslands Nor Cal and check out the video on their channel to see exactly how they've achieved this look, in contrast to how I've done mine. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've certainly enjoyed doing it. It's nice to be back. I'll be putting some more stuff out more frequently, I promise. And don't forget to go over, check out Gaslands Nor Cal channel. It's a relatively new channel, but there's some nice stuff on there, and I think it's going to be one worth following. So go and check them out, give them a like, give them a subscribe, go over there and spread the love. We're done now. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Bye bye, take care.